on CityCast Nashville. It's time for our Friday News Roundup. We're covering why this week's Metro Council meeting ended abruptly and how the Trump administration's threat to cut funding for schools that mention or practice DEI could impact Nashville. Joining me to make sense of it all is our executive producer, Whitney Pasterek, and Nashville Scene columnist and CityCast Nashville contributor, Nicole Williams. It's Friday, February 21st. I'm your host, Marie Cecile Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about. Nicole, Whitney, it's a miracle we're here right now because my internet was down. Nicole, your internet was down. What's going on, Nashville?
Snowpocalypse.
Snowpocalypse or nationwide Xfinity outage? We don't know, but want to give props to my friends at AT&T Fiber, the official internet of CityCast Nashville. Thanks for keeping me running.
I've got AT&T at my new house that I'm going to be moving to soon, so I'm very excited about that.
Oh, humble brag.
Yeah, no big deal.
That's exciting. You know what else is exciting? If you still haven't taken our advice and started watching Metro Council meetings, then it sounds like you missed a real doozy this past Tuesday with a surprise ending no one saw coming. Nicole, fill us in. What did we miss?
Okay, so I guess we could start at the very ending.
Spoiler alert.
It was a cliffhanger.
It was, and we love a cliffhanger. It's so dramatic. Essentially, the council was in the middle of debate on a bill, and Councilmember Tasha Ellis moved to adjourn the meeting.
My favorite part of all of that was that Tasha got up, said, move to adjourn because of the snow, and pointed at the windows, and then just kind of stood there. And then before anyone had voted, she literally put her backpack on and just stood there waiting. We're going.
Done.
God bless. But it was in the middle of this debate on the Fusus guardrails, which, as usual, had become contentious.
It had become contentious. It has been contentious. I continue to object to the name Fusus guardrails bill because, in my mind, there are no guardrails anymore. And one eloquent public commenter had this incredible metaphor. Her name was Trina Huell. She's from East Nashville. And she said, have y'all seen what a tractor trailer can do to guardrails? Basically talking about how the state and federal government have no interest in respecting municipal code. They're not even respecting federal law. And I thought that was just really an evocative image and really captured sort of my feelings about the bill as well.
And just to catch everybody up, if you haven't been following the Fusus guardrails saga, Fusus is this surveillance tech platform that would allow the police to have immediate access to security camera footage right now, just from businesses, but from people if they wanted to opt in. And council voted down Fusus, stating that they thought it would bring too much harm to marginalized communities. And so a response from a few council members has been, well, what if we put more restrictions on it? But, speaking of evocative images, the meme that was going around my socials all week was a picture of a Cheeto being used as a deadbolt in a door with ice slamming the door in with a battering ram.
The guardrails are the Cheeto.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the guardrails are the Cheeto.
And something I actually wrote about in my column for the Nashville Scene this week, we have 7 lawyers on the council out of 40 council members. And most of these lawyers seem to really believe in the rule of law. If we pass a law, it will protect us. And that's understandable because they're lawyers. But that seems, in my mind, to be completely divorced from the context that we just talked about the state and federal government. And if the people charged with ensuring that the law is faithfully adhered to are not interested in doing that, I'm pretty sure we're past the rule of law.
Something that stood out to me in debate was that there are also a lot of parents on council. And there was a parent who came in to give public comment. And so there's a lot of reference to how they need Fusus to keep their children safe. Now, this was not a bill about whether or not we should have Fusus. This was just a bill about putting Cheetos on Fusus. But still, people kept getting up and giving these impassioned statements about how their children needed to be protected from kidnappers, what have you. But these were all white parents.
And you even had a council member Mike Cortez, admitting that he probably would have been against Fusus when he was a single man. But now that he has a child, he believes that we should have surveillance. Now, feel however you want to feel about it, but if we're making data-informed decisions, which the council loves to talk about making data-informed decisions, show me the data as to where surveillance cameras have reduced crime, prevented crime. Like if there was some large-scale study that showed definitively that surveillance reduces crime, I feel like someone would have said something about that by now.
And again, just this was supposed to be a discussion about the Cheetos, not the merits of the door itself.
See, you could have called a point of order on me, Whitney.
Point of order. Wait, does anyone understand that? Speaking of Robert's Rules of Order, when we come back, I want to get into what took the longest at council, because nobody really seemed to understand the way Robert's Rules of Order were supposed to work.
What sort of promises have you made to yourself this year? Maybe get in better shape or eat healthier, save more money, travel somewhere new. What about discovering a new culture by learning a new language? With Babbel, you can do that in just a few weeks. I'm CityCast CEO David Plotz, and I'm having such a good time learning Spanish on Babbel this year. I'm taking a trip to Mexico City in the spring, and Babbel is giving me the Spanish foundation that's going to make my trip so much better. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by more than 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks, or at whatever pace you choose. And because conversing is the key to really understanding each other in a new language, Babbel is designed using practical, real-world conversations. And one way they do that is with their own podcasts. I'm a podcast listener. I'm guessing since you're listening to this podcast, you are too. And I have been getting ready for my Mexico City trip by listening to Babbel's conversational podcasts. There's a short conversation you listen to, then an instructor talks you through what happened, and then you listen again, and then you catch everything when you listen that second time. There's also a great read-along transcript, too, which I love. The one I did today was with Maria and Carmela trying to make dinner plans, but Carmela is so busy. She's way too busy with work and yoga, but finally they agreed on brunch on Saturday. Studies from Yale, Michigan State, and other universities continue to prove that Babbel works. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. So let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting CityCast listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Babbel.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
The bill that took most of the time on Tuesday was something I don't understand, Nicole.
I'm going to be honest, neither do I.
Council member Emily Benedict has proposed that we move the Metro Historic Zoning Commission under the Planning Department. And it seems like a lot of people are freaking out about this. People showed up to speak against it at public comment, and the discussion on the floor went on for a very long time. What were they talking about?
Let me start by saying this was a bill on first reading. So the council hears bills 3 times. It's called 3 readings. And in order for a bill to get assigned to a committee and to get a staff analysis by the council's staff, you have to pass it on first reading. So this is generally perfunctory. All of the bills on first reading are passed en masse at one time, and everyone moves along their merry way.
That's because we need that to get information about what
Yes.
it is, how much it will cost, what are the impacts, da-da-da-da-da.
Exactly. Every once in a while, someone decides they want to debate the merits of a bill on first reading. And on Tuesday, that's what Councilmember Brenda Gadd decided. So we got 45 minutes of debate on a bill that spoiler alert, passed on first reading 34-4.
Yeah, it was it passed overwhelmingly, which was the point at which I died inside. But between that, in that intervening 45 minutes, which felt like 3 days.
Basically, let me see if I can sort of simplify the bill. It's essentially a bureaucratic relocation of one department to another department. This happens. It's not unprecedented. It's not earth-shattering. Sometimes we reorganize things, we rearrange things for efficiency. And so the debate here is about moving the Metro Historical Commission and the Historic Zoning Commission under the purview of the Planning Department. The Historical Commission does a lot of stuff. They do like the historic markers that you see. The Historic Zoning Commission reviews plans to build homes or add on to homes in like our historic preservation or conservation districts throughout Nashville. So like Edgefield or Laughlin Springs, Belmont, Hillsborough, West End.
But they're not saying those are going to go away if they get moved under planning.
No, literally nobody is saying they're going to go away. Nobody is saying that the Historic Zoning Commission isn't going to be allowed to review those permits anymore. I'm a little confused about the purpose of moving it under planning.
Well, I read something that it was a recommendation that came from the mayor's office, and that to some extent it may be intended to protect zoning from anything coming down from the state.
Let me just say, I'm not a fan of the Historic Zoning Commission. They've never done anything to me personally. I don't live in a historic district, but they like quibble over your roof being 1 inch too high. There's all these crazy stories if you just Google Metro Historic Zoning Commission, where people have been required to do the most ridiculous things for their properties. I don't see the purpose for just residential homes. I think mostly people should be able to do what they want with their property as long as they're not hurting anyone else. And so I'm not a fan of the Historic Zoning Commission, and the state legislature also appears to be considering whether or not they are fans of the Historic Zoning Commission. So I guess in response to what may be seen by some as like a heavy-handed approach of just getting rid of it altogether, the mayor's office is like, well, we'll just move it and then that'll be better. Again, we haven't even gotten to the point where staff have like analyzed the bill to be able to tell the council and the public what it does.
Right. And the entire discussion was ludicrous.
Yeah,
because
it was.
There were people online, just normal people. Marie, like you and I tried to get Marie to watch the meeting, but she had to go to spin class. But there were just like normal people online saying, do I need to take my copy of Robert's Rules of Order to the courthouse right now and help them out? Because it was like point of inquiry, point of order, point of order. This. And no one seemed to know what those, like, I do not think that means what you think it means kind of moments.
Even the vice mayor, I love Vice Mayor Angie Henderson, but she was calling things like a point of order / point of parliamentary inquiry. And those are two very different things. It can't be the same thing. So I think everyone needs a little refresher.
And I know a lot of them work really hard, and a lot of them do a lot in their districts. And sometimes Roberts is confusing. And speaking of confusion, when we come back, we're going to dig into a whole lot of education news that came out this week, a lot of it having to do with things that have been handed down from the Trump administration and may or may not be legal.
And we're back. We'd like to turn our attention to Nashville youth and highlight several articles that caught our attention this week. The Nashville Banner spoke to several Nashville area teens about whether or not they feel safe going to high school. I highly recommend folks reading this article. We're going to put it in our show notes today. I was really disheartened to read it, but I feel like it's really important to empathize with what each of them are going through. And for me, what caught my eye was the Ensworth student. At the end of the article, she was saying that she feels safer when she enters her school seeing an armed guard. And personally, I don't know about y'all, but whenever I've seen a completely armed person, it really kind of causes me anxiety. And so to read that, that's how she feels, that when she enters her school seeing an armed guard, it makes her feel safe. How did y'all feel reading this article?
I mean, look, these kids are stressed out beyond belief, right? Like as adults right now, we're all making
so stressed.
These dark, cynical jokes about how, oh, yay, fascism's on the rise. Guess I'll just go to work and act like it's fine. But these are kids. These are teenagers.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in school, when I was in high school, also it's so like listening to all of us talk about teens and the youth. It's like,
I know.
We're
These
so
young
old.
people.
We're so old. But anyway, when I was in high school, I was super stressed about like the AP tests and my college applications. I was not worried that I was going to be like the victim of a school shooting. So like the idea that we, the collective we, have created a world in which children are having to think about whether or not there's going to be a shooting in their school, it's devastating.
And the fact that some of the students are saying that it's normalized. One student said that when they heard about what happened at Antioch, one student was laughing about it, of just like, it's normal. And that is so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And that it is becoming normal.
Well, I think there's a really interesting debate, going back to that comment about the armed guard, about how far we go in hardening schools. Because at what point do you make a school feel like a prison? And I know that Metro Nashville Public Schools, they're currently wrestling with where that line is and what to do to make sure that kids feel safe, but not to make it feel like a maximum security prison when they walk into school.
Meanwhile, the students who go to schools out in our surrounding counties, like Williamson and Wilson County, about a dozen of them spoke to the Tennessean this week about their feelings on the book bans that are happening in those school districts. They haven't reached us here in Davidson yet, but over 1,000 books have already been banned in some of our surrounding counties. And again, this article is also worth reading. We'll put it in the show notes. But the comment that stood out to me from that one was a student named Hannah Hollings, who's a 17-year-old down on the Williamson County line of Brentwood. And she said, quote, "There's not enough kids in these meetings where they're talking about whether they want to remove books. I feel like the students should have a bigger part in the conversation." And I think that quote ties into the conversation about school safety too. I mean, I know that MNPS has student board members, and one of them we talked about last week is, pleading, just keep us safe. I mean, are we listening enough to kids? Do these kids need to be given more of a voice?
I think oftentimes parents can underestimate what their kids can handle. Like, if your kid is able to get up and go to school every day with the fear that there's going to be a shooting in the school, then I think that they could probably handle reading some material that may have like a scene in it that doesn't feel completely age appropriate.
These kids are having to deal with very adult, very frightening things every single day in real life.
I think if we're going to ask kids to do active shooter drills starting at kindergarten, they should be empowered enough to voice their opinions on what books they should be able to read. We're treating them like adults at a very, very young age, dealing with some very, very serious issues.
Yeah.
But yet they can't read Perks of Being a Wallflower.
That's such a good point, Marie.
It's interesting where we choose to treat children like adults and where we choose to treat them like infants.
You know where I learned about sex? Clan of the Cave Bear.
What is that?
It's a book from the 70s or early 80s. It's about cave people, Nicole, having sex under polar bear blankets and stuff. Anyway.
Is it banned?
No. Man, my fellow Gen Xers are going to know what I'm talking about. Clan of the Cave Bear, mass market paperback on the bottom shelf of my parents' auxiliary bookshelf. And again, look at me. I'm great. But I do have a thing for woolly mammoths. But Marie, we also had a lot of concerns, I think, coming out from parents and educators this week.
Yeah, so parents and educators are really concerned. The Trump administration's executive orders and funding cuts are impacting Nashville. Let's talk about funding. Research hospitals and universities here in Nashville and across the state are pleading with our congressional delegation to push back against Trump's cuts to medical research funding.
Good luck.
Yeah, but when we're talking about our local institutions and the ones across the state, in that letter, the leaders from places like Vanderbilt and Meharry stated that Tennessee-based researchers secured $770 million in National Institutes of Health funding during fiscal year 2023. That supported more than 9,000 jobs and contributed to nearly $2 billion in economic activity. That could all go away with these cuts. Don't you think, Nicole, that at some point someone's going to think about this, at least just from a financial perspective?
No. I mean, if those someones are supposed to be the people in Congress, no. I don't see why it would happen. It's like a cult of personality. And I don't know what it's going to take for that message to really sink in. I've seen no evidence that these very valid pleas are moving any hearts and minds in Congress.
Well, 22 states are suing the Trump administration over this. Tennessee is not one of them. And I guess my plea will be, it's not hyper-local, but good grief, people, Tennessee is the home of St. Jude. Frickin' St. Jude, where they cure babies of cancer. And they develop treatments that save lives around the world. And that the very white, very conservative mainstream country music industry has proudly supported for decades. How are these people not standing up and at least fighting for that? Like, how did curing cancer in babies become partisan?
But wait, there's more.
Great.
The Trump administration is also threatening schools and universities with funding cuts if they don't eliminate any mention or practice of DEI, which stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I actually make people say it out loud instead of just saying DEI.
That's actually really smart.
Yeah.
I saw it on TikTok.
Oh, good. Vanderbilt made headlines last week by scrubbing references to diversity, equity, and inclusion from everything at the university's medical center, as well as changing the name of the Student Center for Social Justice and Identity to the Student Center for Belonging and Communities, which strikes me as very different.
Community. Okay.
Marie, you noticed an article from a friend of the pod.
Listeners, you got to check out the Vanderbilt Hustler, a past guest, Brina Ratangi. She's a current student at Vanderbilt. She is kicking butt as their editorial director. And in the wake of the DEI removal, Vanderbilt University Medical Center President Jeff Balzer sent out a video message. And as Brina and her colleague Allison Winters reported, step by step, word for word, some of it was just straight up not true. For example, the executive order they're basing this off of applied to federal personnel.
I think these people are scared to lose federal funding, and so they're complying in advance.
But they're losing it anyway. Like, that's what's crazy. They wrote a whole letter about how they're losing it anyway. But, oh, maybe if we get rid of our diversity, equity, and inclusion webpage, Trump will, like, shine his favor upon us. Like, nobody cares about this at the federal government.
No. And this harkens back, Nicole, honestly, to something you and I have talked about before, which is this belief by some people in Nashville that if we're just nice to the state Republicans, they won't hurt us anymore. That is not and has never been true. You know what I liked about Brina's Hustler article, though? Duke University is actually not complying in advance. Duke University in North Carolina, which did not integrate until 1963, their administration has directed the university community to, quote, refrain from making significant changes.
They're duking it out.
Until the administration can evaluate the executive orders further. And I think it's important also to note that these are just warnings. No actual guidance has been given. And a lot of this is going to get challenged in the courts. And a lot of it is probably unconstitutional. So why is everybody jumping so fast to not get hit? Well, we said our answer already. Okay.
I'm terrified.
It's, that thing about how insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
In the most ominous headline in a while, let's give this the most ominous headline of the week. Maybe that's a new feature we should have here on Friday News Roundup. The Tennessee Lookout reported yesterday that Tennessee schools, not just universities, this is including kindergarten through 12th grade, have been given 2 weeks to end, quote, all race-based preferences, or they risk losing federal funding. And I guess I want to just end this discussion by reading this quote from Craig Traynor, who's the acting assistant secretary for civil rights at the Department of Education. Ahem. Educational institutions have toxically indoctrinated students with the false premise that the United States is built upon, quote, systemic and structural racism and advanced discriminatory policies and practices. Again, that's from the guy in charge of civil rights.
Okay, right. I just wanted to circle back to that. Well, that is a claim. What are race-based preferences?
I don't know.
What does that even mean? Can we get some good news? Dunna, good news.
Yes.
Oh my God, that's right. I
Favorite
forgot we had a
jingle.
good news jingle.
We
Let's
already
do
have
it.
a jingle.
First of all, kudos to Sheryl Crow, local Nashville-ish resident Sheryl Crow, who went viral this week for a video of her waving goodbye as she sent her Tesla back to wherever it came from. I would like to point out, though, that the trees in the video still had leaves on them, so I don't think it was a recent video, but props to Sheryl for seizing the moment. What else? Marie?
Well, we have a new billboard in town. Thank you, Chapel Roan. She has a new lesbian country song out, which is exciting. And so Nashville has a billboard, and it has a phone number on it that you can call.
It's 620-HOTTOGO. Call 620-HOTTOGO. Call it now. Well, Nicole, you're going to love this because we need to talk about restaurants. And I know you love talking about restaurants with us.
My favorite thing.
Because next week is Restaurant Week. And Marie and I looked down the list of who's giving incredible specials for Restaurant Week. Nicole, when I tell you that you could get a $35 lunch at Elliston Place Soda Shop, just $35, does that sound appealing to you?
Down from what?
Exactly. What about Lakeside Lounge?
Shout out also to the good people at the DraftKings Sports and Social for $10. It looks like you can get the saddest cheeseburger you've ever seen and a glass of light beer. We did notice there's a $40 dinner at Folk.
That could be a deal since it's $1,000 to eat there.
And delicious.
So I was told that once Donald Trump assumed office, everything was going to be cheaper. That's what I was told.
I would be okay if this was like all the awesome restaurants in town truly offering deals.
I personally was so excited to hear that Restaurant Week was coming because that's what I did in New York City. It was always such a deal. You got to go to all these fancy places, Michelin star restaurants I got to go to for a lunch at the price of $35.
Wow.
And then I look at ours and it's like,
I know. And we love these restaurants and we're not picking on them. But here's my other favorite example, Love and Exile. They're doing a $55 date night for two. Okay. This includes one shareable, 2 flatbreads or sandwiches, 1 dessert, and 2 glasses of wine. Here's my hot tip to you, CityCast Nashville listeners. Go to Love and Exile for happy hour. Everything listed there is like $3. And you can walk out of there with a bill that's going to be about $30 for the two of you. I don't understand.
it's not a deal.
But I do want to end with something that people should go to next week. Athletes Unlimited Pro Basketball at Municipal Auditorium is the best time that I've had in a really long time. It is a individual tournament in which these professional women's basketball players form teams and play full basketball games head to head. Full 5-on-5, full court. It's like 1,500 people max, maybe in Municipal. So you are right on top of the action. It feels like you're at a high school game, but it's actually pro level, Olympic level basketball players. And it is fantastic. Everybody should go to their website at auprosports.com/basketball. Check the schedule. They play Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, 2 games each night. And it's amazing. And it's actually really affordable. And it's good. So you should go to that. Nicole, what would your recommendation for people to go and do this weekend be?
Go and take a bath with some bubbles and candles. It's really great. I did it yesterday. It was very relaxing.
Marie, what are you doing this weekend?
Well, I want to suggest this is closing weekend of The Mountaintop, directed by my good friend, Alicia Hamer, who actually just did 3 questions for our newsletter. And that article is on our website, so you can check that out. She directed the play, and it closes this weekend at T-Pax Johnson Theater. So I'm actually going on Saturday. I'm very excited to see it. Yeah.
Everybody go check that out, or just stay home and take a bath.
Take a bath. I don't have a bathtub, Nicole, so
Wow.
Thanks for the reminder.
Wow. Very sorry.
Next thing you know, she's going to be ranting about historical zoning violations in her new neighborhood. Thanks, Nicole.
No problem. Happy to help.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. I'm your host, Marie Cecile Anderson. Our executive producer is Whitney Pasternak. Our producer is Daniel Sumstein. Our Hey Nashville newsletter editor is Margaret Kingsbury, and our theme music is by Prof Jenkins. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell your friends? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Toodles!